As mentioned in the first part, this documentary is divided into 3 parts. This is part 3, so this is the final part. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out part 1 and part 2 to really understand the full story. And part 1 covers everything that went down in the period from 96 to 98, and that was before Snoop Dogg was signed to No Limit. And this part explains how the fallout between Snoop Dogg, Row Records and Suge Knight began. And the second part covers everything that went down in the period from 98 to 2000, and that was when Snoop was signed to No Limit Records. And in this period they had several confrontations, and Row had even posted a thread on their website warning that all dogs should run and hide because Suge was coming home. And Snoop replied on this message in his track titled So Hard, and he said,
I ain't running and I ain't hiding. I'm each side for life. Y'all know where to find me.
So that's where part 2 ended, and now we pick up from here in part 3. And on May the 29th in 2001, Snoop Dogg released the track F What They Say for the soundtrack of the movie What's the Worst That Could Happen. And in this track he doesn't mention Row or Suge by name, but I think that the lyrics pertain to the situation between Snoop and Row. And on the chorus Snoop says,
You can still talk about me, don't give a fuck about me. I made them read about me, don't give a fuck about it. I'm living right about it, what they say about me.
And at the end of the last verse, Snoop says,
Keep my name out your mouth and my business out the motherfucking streets, you motherfucking geek. Your freak is a freak. I never crept with the hard shit at all.
And this line is probably subliminally directed at Suge, because on later tracks he would also talk about Suge Knight's wife, but I will get into more details about that later in this video. And on July the 31st in 2001, the second album from the Eastsiders, titled Deuces and Trays The Old Fashioned Way, was released. And the album featured a track titled Dogghouse in Your Mouth, and you can hear Snoop on the chorus. And Snoop Dogg doesn't mention Row Records on this track, but Trey D had a message for Row with the line,
It's going down, Dogghouse Gangsta style. If Death Row, we'll take 'em out.
And another guy named Rough Dog, or it was King Lou, and both are featured on the track, also makes a reference to the incident from the previous year during the Source Awards in 2000, where Trey D and Snoop's clique had some issues with people from Row Records. And he says,
And that's when the Source Awards when I caught them. While y'all was pacing, the homies was bringing up situations.
And about a month after the album was released, Suge Knight was finally freed from prison on August the 6th in 2001. Suge was picked up in a limo, and of course the first thing he did after getting into the limo was light up a big cigar. He then put on his jewelry, including 2 platinum handcuffs, and around the time that Suge was freed from prison, they changed the name from Row Records to The Row. And in 2002, not long after Suge Knight was released from jail, he did something that nobody expected. And he offered Kurupt, who was Snoop's close friend and member of the Dogg Pound, $3 million to re-sign with Row Records, or The Row I should say, because they changed the name to The Row. He also offered Kurupt the position of vice president for the label. And Kurupt agreed to re-sign with Suge Knight in 2002, taking the role of vice president, and this move of course sparked a feud between Kurupt and his former homies from the Dogg Pound, Daz and Snoop Dogg. And some people believe that Suge's decision to sign Kurupt was a strategic move to break up and disrupt the entire DPG clique, and this tactic was effective as the conflict between Kurupt and his former DPG allies continued from 2002 to 2005. So this whole situation led to a significant beef between the former friends Daz and Kurupt, as well as between Snoop and Kurupt. And not long after Kurupt got back with Suge, Snoop Dogg released the album Snoop Dogg Presents Doggystyle All-Stars Welcome to the House Volume 1 on August the 13th in 2002. And on that album Snoop released a track titled The Strong Will Eat the Weak, and in that song Snoop lashes out at Suge Knight and Row. He doesn't say his name, but it's clear that a couple of lines are intended for Suge. And here's what Snoop had to say on that track.
Anybody kill him means crip up, pop rope, try to see who with y'all heat me. This man cause yo eat me.
And of course Snoop Dogg was referring to the Pyro Bloods who were associated with Row, and also the Crips that were associated with Row Records. And in his second verse Snoop takes it a step further, and he also says a line that probably is intended for Kurupt. Check it out.
You big fat hater, them weak n***s on your team, straight traitors. They can't go back to them set, handprints on the back of their neck.
So the beef was still in full swing, and a couple of months after the Doggystyle All-Stars album was released, Snoop Dogg released the album Paid the Cost to Be the Boss in November of 2002. And on this album, there's a track titled Pimp Slap, where Snoop Dogg takes shots at Suge Knight, Kurupt, and all the other artists that were associated with the label. And this was the biggest diss track that Snoop Dogg had recorded until this point. So let's zoom in on a couple of things that Snoop said on this record. And in the first verse, Snoop makes it very clear that he doesn't got beef or anything like that with the Bloods in general, but that his beef with Suge is personal. And he said,
This is about me and Simon, not me and y'all. I got love for a bunch of real B-dogs.
And as most people probably already know, Simon was a nickname that was used for Suge Knight. And after this line, Snoop shouts out several known members of the Bloods who he's down with. And then Snoop points out again that this beef with Suge is personal and that there isn't any beef between the Crips and the Bloods. And he says,
Now back to the scrub, it ain't about Crip or blood, it's about you being jealous of what I done.
And later in that same verse he says this.
And skirt up Wilshire Boulevard, I'm not exhibit, you can't pull my whole car.
And this line refers to an incident where Suge Knight encountered Exhibit in a club, and Exhibit had recorded several tracks with Snoop, such as Beat Please on the No Limit Top Dog album, and Snoop and Dre were also featured on Exhibit's hit record X from his album Restless. So when Suge saw Exhibit in a club, he approached him and he asked him if he was banging with Snoop. And Exhibit replied that he wasn't involved with Snoop beyond making music with him. Nothing further happened, but Snoop heard about the encounter and he felt that Exhibit let him down. And as a result, he recorded this line about Exhibit on Pimp Slap. And in the same verse, Snoop also says,
Oh, you groupies, when you was doing time in Camp Snoopy, with the facts and snitches, no killers, just bitches, and you was paying niggas off with all my riches.
With these lyrics, Snoop is referring to the money that the label still owed him from the time that he was signed to Death Row. And then Snoop continues with,
I got the word on you, Simon. You need to just start rhyming, cause you the biggest star on your label, and them other just crumbs off my table.
And as you can hear, Snoop is essentially saying that the rappers currently at the Row were not significant and that Suge should start rapping himself because he was the most known person on the label back then. And then Snoop mentions again that he wasn't paid as he was supposed to be when he was signed to Death Row Records.
You're not able to compete with the heat that I drop, and I still ain't been paid for 187 on the top.
And with 187 on the cop, Snoop refers to his debut track Deep Cover that featured him and Dr. Dre. And how that record came about is actually a really cool story, and I also did a complete breakdown about that. So if you want to know more about it, make sure to check out that video as well, and you can find it on the channel. And after the 187 line, Snoop ends the first verse with,
I started your shit, I will end your shit if you keep talking shit on Crip.
The first line that Snoop says in his second verse that comes up after the chorus is this.
If I shoot you, I'll be brainless and you'll be famous, and I'll be spending money out the anus.
Now did Snoop really say, and I'll be spending money out the anus? Now I love Snoop, but I have to be honest, because I'm somewhat brain boggled. And I guess it's already clear to you that I'm not a native English speaker, and it sounds kinda strange to me, so I just wanted to make sure that spending money out the anus wasn't a common saying in the USA. So I searched for spending money out the anus on Google, and guess what one of the first search results was that popped up. And here's the proof on the screen, and you can see Diddy's lyrics from the track Can't Nobody Hold Me Down, and he says, young, black and famous with money hanging out the anus. I mean, like, what the f*** is that all about? Come on, you can't make this up. So, I'm still brain boggled, and I still don't know if this is common to say in the USA or not, and honestly, I don't even want to know anymore. So now let's get back to the breakdown of the track Pimp Slap, and Snoop is now getting real personal with Suge, and he says,
This a bitch like his wife, Suge Knight's a bitch and that's all my life.
And then Snoop also drops a few lines aimed at Kurupt, his former close homie from the Dog Pound, and he said,
Your rappers and artists tell them, shut it up, cause I every last one of them up, especially Kurupt. See, that's my little homeboy, so he know what's up.
So Snoop was on fire on this track, and later a music video for the track Pimp Slap was also released on the Row Killa movie, and this was a movie that included several music videos dissing Suge Knight and Death Row, or The Row, and we'll get into more details about this movie later in this video. After Snoop Dogg released Pimp Slap, The Row responded back on the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack that was released on the 4th of April in 2003. At that time, several new rappers had joined the label, including Crooked I, Eastwood, Spider Loc, and also Gangsta Rit from the Booyah Tribe was down with The Row. On the soundtrack there's a track titled The Row Y'all Hoes featuring Eastwood, Spider Loc, and Gangsta Rit. And this track is a diss aimed at Snoop Dogg, and it's a direct reply to Pimp Slap, and they also say a few things about Daz on that record. So let's break down a couple of things that were said on that record. And in the first verse, Eastwood said,
Spitting envy on your record, Snoop Dogg, you a hoe. How could you ever be a leader? When Don Juan got you twirling your baton like a fucking cheerleader. Too small for the white beater.
And these lines refer to Snoop's close association at the time with the pimp Don Magic 1. And the line about the wife beater is a response to the music video for Beautiful, where Snoop Dogg is seen wearing a wife beater. And another thing that Eastwood says is this.
With a death row wife and death row kids, and everybody knowing that Spanky ain't his.
And he's talking about Spanky, and Spanky is Snoop's son. So this line was implying that Snoop's son wasn't really his son. So things were getting real personal when you're talking about somebody's family like that. And on the chorus, Eastwood basically says F Superfly, F Daz, and F Snoop. And then Spider Loc takes over for the second verse, and he fires some shots at Daz, and he said this.
Even further, y'all tried to end his life, cause the homie was running all in his wife. Got some real shit, too hard for Delmore to deal with.
Now I'm not really sure about the details, but supposedly Suge had something going on with Daz's ex-wife, which obviously didn't sit well with Daz, and there were even some rumors that he wanted to take his own life at some point. And at the end of his verse, Spider Loc says,
I'm choking out you hoes, leaving your shirt soaking with blood. Badass, no jaw get broken.
And this line refers to Badass, who was Daz and Snoop's homie, who was beaten up by death row people, and during the altercation he reportedly broke his jaw, and that's why Spider Loc mentioned that in his verse. And then comes the worst thing that was said on this track in my opinion, and this is what Spider Loc said after he did his verse.
Hey Snoop, that's why I'm f***ing mom's Beverly. I like to step pops. You ever had some bomb ass?
Now this was recorded when Snoop Dogg's mother Beverly was still alive, so it wasn't that he said something about Snoop's mother after she had passed away. Of course things are getting real personal when you're talking about somebody's mother, but that happens sometime, and even Snoop Dogg had a line about Eazy-E's mother on the track Dre Day. But this was actually the first time I really heard somebody speaking about someone else's mother like that on a record, mentioning her by name, which makes it even more personal. And Spider Loc also spoke about this on his YouTube channel, and he said that after he did his verse, Suge told him to add that part about effing Snoop's mother, so it was actually Suge's idea to do that, and Spider Loc just did it, and he added the "she had some bomb ass pussy" line, which was a reference to a DPG and Snoop track titled Bomb Ass Pussy that was released on the Dog Food album. And Spider Loc also said that he regretted speaking about Snoop's mother like that, and he mentioned that later he also apologized to Snoop for that, and that Snoop accepted his apology. And on the third verse, Gangsta Rit from the Booyah Tribe can be heard, and his whole verse is basically a diss towards Snoop Dogg, and one of the things he said was this.
He had a crew he rode with, yeah, them Dogghouse cats. He called them Dopey groupies. How long was that?
And Gangsta Rit was probably referring to the letter that Snoop supposedly had wrote to Suge Knight that was published in the Too Gangsta for Radio booklet. And Gangsta Rit also referred to the track Pimp Slap, and he said,
Wasn't thinking about the diss until we heard Pimp Slap. Now it's all about 45 Glock and Mac. Who you gonna slap, Kurupt? Who you gonna slap, Kurupt? You ain't slap this shit.
And he ends his verse with,
I'm the GANXSTA gangster. The Snoop Dogg on the tribe, I'm bang.
So the track The Row Y'all Hoes was a direct response to Snoop Dogg's Pimp Slap, and Crooked I, who was also signed to Death Row at the time, responded to the track Pimp Slap by recording a track titled Slapback. This track can be found online, and on it Crooked I fires some shots at Snoop Dogg and Daz, and in the first verse he says this.
Set up shop where you live, now I'm on top of your crib with a revolver, aiming it at your mama and kids, cause I'm a monster. Snoop Dogg, eat a dick, I stomp ya.
And then Crooked I continues, and he also had something to say about Daz.
Hit you with the rocket launcher, then smash ass silly, smack your ass silly with the Mac Millet.
And in the second verse, Crooked I goes at Snoop again, and also he had something to say about Snoop Dogg's tank top.
Pimp slap me? Hold on, wait, stop. That's as funny as you rocking a tank top. Who the fuck pumped you up to show your dope fiend shape? Somebody get his steak in a protein shake.
And in the second verse, Crooked I also said this.
You getting pimped by the Bishop Don. Heard you getting butt by his magic wand. And you've been in your own artist over all the while. That's why they call your label Doggystyle.
In the third verse, Crooked I also comments on Snoop's departure to No Limit Records, attributing it to Suge Knight.
Only reason you left cause Suge Knight allowed it. Snoopy on No Limit, you didn't last 4 minutes. Your flow finished and that's what's gonna diminish your whole image.
And Crooked I ends his third verse with a punchline in which he said that Tupac basically took Snoop's spot at Death Row Records.
Call me a crumb off the table. Here's what I'm able to do. I'm able to disable your crew. Cause I'm in my prime like Pac when he took the label from you.
Just a month after the release of the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack, Snoop and Daz responded on Daz's album titled DPGC, You Know What I'm Throwing Up. And Snoop Dogg directly targets Suge and everyone associated with him multiple times throughout the album. For example, on the public service announcement, which serves as an intro to the track You Ain't Shh, Snoop says,
I just wanna say Suge Knight's a bitch, and everybody down with it can eat a motherfucking dick. Straight up, this crib, 20 crib.
And after Snoop said what he had to say, the track titled You Ain't Shh starts, featuring Daz and Badass, and the beat was produced by Superfly. And on this track, Badass takes shots at Kurupt for returning to Death Row, and he says,
It's a lie if you switch what happened. In your talking, you gon' die if I hit you. So just watch it. 6 banana clips, each with 50 rocks.
And on the chorus, Daz mentioned Kurupt and Suge by name, and he said that they ain't shh.
Kurupt, you ain't Suge Knight, you ain't shit.
And in the third verse, Daz takes shots at Kurupt, using some lines from the track Who Got Some Gangsta-ish that was released on the Murder Was the Case movie soundtrack in '94, and he said this.
And that's why we X no from the fan. With sides like that, cause we can't with no like that. And that's what I call a bitch.
And later in the third verse, Daz says something about Death Row and Kurupt, using lyrics similar to those of Tupac from the track Bomb First. Check it out.
I'm a death row killer. Suge Knight can die to corrupt dumb Gotti. It's on when we find you. Transforming don't deserve to breathe.
And another diss track was released on the album with a similar title as the album title, which was DPGC, You Know What I'm Throwing Up. And on that track, Daz and Snoop take shots at Suge Knight again. And the chorus on this track is very similar as the track The Row, Y'all Hoes, from the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack, on which the Row artists diss Daz and Snoop. And after Daz drops some bars, Snoop Dogg adds this.
Suge Knight is a fat bitch.
And on the outro of the track, Snoop had a message for Suge again, and he said,
Suge Knight is a fat, sucking, hating ass bitch.
And after that, he also had a little something to say about Suge's wife.
Fuck your wife too. No singing ass bitch. Got Dr. Dre on her breath.
And about a month later, after the DPGC You Know What I'm Throwing Up album was released, Snoop Dogg released a mixtape titled Welcome to the Church Volume 1 in June of 2003. And on this mixtape, he once again targeted Suge Knight and The Row, and on the track titled Hater in You, on which Snoop and Lil Hef that can be heard, Snoop said this.
She didn't know I knew it. She used to f with that bitch Suge in 96 and 97.
And later on the track, he mentioned Suge again, and he said this.
I love breaking Suge Knight and his bras, just like breaking the laws.
And he once again mentioned what happened between him and Suge's ex-wife.
I used to have his baby mama like taking it off or taking it off. Little nasty was licking my balls.
And Snoop isn't done with Suge yet, and he also said this.
You's a hater, bitch. Like, remember, I'm the one who made you rich.
So once again he referred to all the money that he made when Snoop was signed to Death Row. And later Snoop also refers to the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack, on which the Row artists dissed Snoop and Daz.
I giggle and laugh, cause you say you can't stand me. Your whole rap label is a dysfunctional family.
And on the outro of the track, Snoop goes hard at Suge again, and he mentioned once again what had happened between him and Suge's ex-wife.
You's a bitch, and I'ma tell you to your face, you's a hoe. And by the way, your baby mama sucked some good dick, Suge.
And on the Welcome to the Church Volume 1 mixtape, there's also another track on which shots were fired at Death Row. The track titled LBCing It Up, featuring Snoop, Nate Dogg, and Lil Hef that. And this time it's not Snoop, but Lil Hef that who lashes out at Death Row, and he said this.
We trust no and trust no hoes. We bust on that fuck Death Row.
And later in his verse he also adds this.
We the type of that'll do you wrong with a song. And fuck you stuff for talking wrong on a song.
And on the outro of the track, you can hear Snoop mocking Death Row, and he's referring to the Dysfunctional Family soundtrack, and he also mentioned Crooked I's name, and he said this.
Man, we got that dysfunctional soundtrack. They dissing Snoop Dogg on them CDs. Y'all want that new CD? Dysfunctional Family, man. Check it out. Crooked Eye and all of.
In addition to the diss tracks, Daz also released the Row Killa DVD in October of 2003, which also featured Snoop Dogg, and it was a short film where a Suge Knight lookalike is set up by a girl who's working with Daz, and eventually the Suge Knight lookalike is then kidnapped, placed in the trunk of a car. And this movie also includes the music videos for the diss tracks You Ain't Shh from the DPGC You Know What I'm Throwing Up album, as well as the music video for Pimp Slap from Snoop Dogg's Paid the Cost to Be the Boss album. Additionally, there are some interviews with Daz and Snoop and some behind the scenes footage. And it's funny to see that Lil C-Style, who dissed Snoop a few years earlier on the Chronic 2000 and the 2 Gangsta for Radio compilation, also makes an appearance, and apparently there was no ongoing beef between Snoop and Lil C-Style, as both were present when the music videos were recorded. And the next year, in 2004, Kurupt responded to the disses aimed at him on several tracks, including a track titled Eat a Dick, and also on the track titled No Vaseline Part 2, where we dissed Daz, Superfly, Snoop and Badass. And the track Eat a Dick was released as a bonus track on the album The Originals, which was the self-titled debut album by the West Coast gangster rap group The Originals, composed of CJ Genovese, Kurupt and Keita. It was released on March 30 in 2004. And Kurupt also recorded the track No Vaseline Part 2, and the track begins with snippets of Snoop's track Pimp Slap, and you can also hear a few snippets of Daz's track Catch You in the Club, which this is Suge and Kurupt, and this track was released in 2003 on DJ Wookid's mixtape West Side Reloaded. And additionally, snippets from You Ain't Shit by Daz and Badass were also included on the intro of the track. And on the first verse, Kurupt mainly disses Superfly, and in the second verse he's mainly dissing Daz, and in the third verse he's primarily targeting Snoop. And he begins the third verse with this.
Snoop got off the road like a bitch, then slid out the road like a bitch, then run from the road like a bitch. You need to just strip and suck down my dick.
And this track was actually recorded for Kurupt's album Against the Grain, which was released on August the 23rd in 2005. Eventually the diss tracks were removed from the album, but can still be heard on the bootleg compilation Against the Grain, the EP. The diss tracks were recorded around 2004, but were not released because after making up with Snoop Dogg and the rest of the Dogg Pound in 2005, which we will cover in a few minutes, Kurupt didn't want to face any backlash for his previously recorded diss tracks. However, some bootleggers managed to obtain these tracks, and that's how they got leaked online. And in 2004, Kurupt also recorded a few more tracks where he dissed Snoop, Daz, Superfly and Badass. There's a freestyle version of the track titled Behind the Walls featuring Kurupt and Try. Essentially the message in these diss tracks are quite similar and revolve around the former friends calling each other bitches and hoes who eat dicks all day. And during this period, in 2004, Kurupt also made several tracks with Keita, the supposed shot caller from the Rolling 60 Crips, whose name has been mentioned a few times earlier already in this video. And on the unreleased track titled Why You Trippin', that was recorded for the unreleased West Cap Secret album, Keita is featured alongside Kurupt, and Keita disses Snoop Dogg in the last verse, and he says this.
But I hate you so much right now. That's the sound of the bunch of niggas from the Dogghouse.
And Dogghouse was Snoop's label. He switched names between Dogghouse and Doggystyle Records, and it's clear that Keita mentioned Snoop Dogg's label with this line. And then he continues dissing and he said this.
Scary ass busted ass jealous motherfuckers. A nigga still down with the road, motherfucker.
And in this line, Keita mentioned that he is still down with the Row, and that's because he already worked with Row for the 2 Gangsta for Radio compilation, and on that album he appeared on the track titled Projects together with Swoop G. And also he refers to Snoop Dogg being close with Don Magic 1 at that time.
Bishop Don Juan, Father Sucker Snoop. What kind of pimp paint his clothes red and yellow like a bitch?
And the next thing he said was this.
Sure, this crib here, bitch. West Side neighborhood, rolling 60 crib.
And in the next line he goes at Snoop, Superfly, Daz, and Bishop Don Magic 1 again.
Fake dog, super bitch, dag, sucker Snoopy, big ass bitch, Don Juan, take it in a hip.
And he ends the verse referring to the incident where he supposedly knocked Nate Dogg's teeth out. And he said this.
Y'all niggas, get ass niggas, fuck around and get your teeth knocked out, nigga.
And by the way, this wasn't the first time that Keita had something to say about Snoop, because on his debut album titled Let's Get It Crackin', that was released in May of 2002, there's also a track titled In the Hood We Trust, in which he mentioned Snoop, and he said this.
Can't stop, won't stop, refuse to quit, cause I ain't with that scary ass Snoop Dogg.
Ultimately, things didn't end well for Keita, as he is supposedly serving a 20+ years in Arizona for second-degree murder. Now, Now after several years of beef between Snoop and Death Row, Snoop decided to put an end to it, leading to a hip hop peace summit on April the 13th in 2005 to resolve all his feuds. MTV reported on this, stating, a week after pledging West Coast unity at a press conference for his tour with the Game, Snoop Dogg took his mission a step further Wednesday, April 13th, by hosting a hip hop peace summit and squashing all of his own beefs. And Snoop Dogg released this statement. I felt we should come together as one, organize, unify, and start making records with each other and be about a cause. It's time for us to start standing up for something. It's called Protect the West. We're all moving together. We ended all our beefs. And MTV also reported that Snoop was wearing a Protect the West t-shirt and that he said that he ended his longtime feud with Suge Knight as well as his beef with J.O. Felony and Kurupt also rejoined the Dogg Pound. And Snoop Dogg also said this to MTV. Anybody who thought they had a problem with me or had a problem with me in the past, I called them up and told them I don't want any problem. I ain't got time to beef. I'm 30-something years old with 3 kids at the bed and they're trying to see their daddy. And MTV also reported that Suge Knight wasn't in attendance and was not available for comment, but Snoop insisted that Death Row Records founder was supportive of the Protect the West cause. And Snoop Dogg said, it's not an individual move. It's not about me and him personally, but we need to end all our personal beefs because business doesn't move with beef. And from that moment on, everything was good again between Snoop, Daz, Kurupt and the other DPG members. And Snoop Dogg also explained in interviews how he exactly squashed the beef with Suge Knight. And he said this about it. Quote, I had to go get that cool with him. I had to go sit down with Suge when we wasn't cool. End quote. And Snoop said that he saw Suge in a hotel lobby in Vegas and his bodyguard immediately approached him and Suge responded, telling Snoop's people to let him know that he wasn't tripping and he just wanted to talk to Snoop. So Snoop asked Suge to wait in the lobby, assuring him that his crew would come down to show him what room he was in, and he made it clear that when Suge came to the room, no one else would be there so they could have a personal conversation without anyone else around. So a little bit later, Snoop sent someone down to get Suge and instructed them to give Suge the key to his hotel room, and he said he did that to make Suge feel comfortable. And when Suge entered the room, Snoop was there, and besides Snoop also his homie Superfly was there, and according to Snoop, the entire conversation was essentially about expressing their love for each other. And Snoop asked Suge, why did you want to kill me when you loved me? And then he said to Suge, matter of fact, I forgive you. I ain't gonna do nothing to you. There are people outside that want your head right now, but we gonna be cool from this day forward. And since then, they were good, bringing the long-standing beef that lasted from 96 to 2005 to an end. Thankfully, it all turned out relatively well and there were no fatalities, especially considering the numerous events when things could have escalated very easily. In November of 2006, an animated music video was released on the DVD of Snoop's album The Blue Carpet Treatment for the track Snooperman, in which Snoop is seen eliminating someone who looks very similar to Suge Knight. And it's not entirely clear to me why Snoop would do that after making peace with Suge, but it could be of course be the case that the track and animated music video had already been recorded before the beef was squashed between them, and that Snoop decided to put it on the DVD anyway. Now if there are any notable events in the beef between Snoop and Death Row and Suge that I didn't cover in this video, I would appreciate it very much if you can share it in the comments. I put a lot of time into making this video and all the research that was needed, so if you find this video interesting, I would really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. All feedback and positive reactions are also highly appreciated. So by watching this video, you know exactly how everything unfolded in chronological order during the beef between Snoop and Death Row that spanned nearly a decade. There are many more videos to come, so if you don't want to miss out on any new uploads, make sure to hit the notification bell. And if you want to see more Death Row Records related videos, make sure to check out the other videos on the channel as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back again in the next video.